The lights of the grand stage glimmer across thousands of faces. The crowd is buzzing with excitement. Cameras sweep across the audience, and the judges settle into their seats. You can see Simon Cowell, curious as ever, watching the next act walk slowly onto the stage. A group of young men and women, maybe 15 in total, wearing matching white shirts and blue scarves. Their movements are graceful, careful, almost poetic. The audience notices something strange. They walk differently. They do not speak to the host. Instead, one of the members gently raises a small board that reads, "We are the Silent Souls Choir from Manila." The crowd murmurs. Simon tilts his head, intrigued. Sofia Vergara leans forward. Heidi Klum smiles kindly, while Howie Mandel watches closely, his hand on his chin. The host, with a soft smile, speaks into the mic. "You're the Silent Souls Choir from Manila. Are you ready?" The group nods. Not a single sound leaves their lips. The camera pans to the audience, and someone whispers, "They're deaf." Simon's eyebrows rise. The tension builds. How can a deaf choir perform on a global talent show where music is everything? What will they do? What will they show? Then, silence. The lights dim. A single spotlight shines on the center stage. The music begins, not for them to hear, but for us. For the audience. For the judges. But they don't rely on sound. They rely on rhythm, on memory, on feeling. The conductor, a young woman with gentle eyes, raises her hands. Every member of the choir watches her intently. Her hands move, not in time with beats they can hear, but in time with emotion they can feel. They begin to sign, not with words, but with gestures that seem to float like poetry. Their faces move with every rise and fall of the melody. Their eyes speak. Their hands dance. Their silence sings. The screen zooms in. A tear rolls down one girl's cheek as she signs the lyrics of a song the world knows well, "You Raise Me Up." But they are not singing it, they are living it. The entire stage feels alive. The audience begins to cry. You can feel it, the kind of silence that carries more power than any scream. Simon leans forward, completely captivated. His eyes are wet. Sophia covers her mouth in disbelief. Howie whispers, "Oh my God." The camera captures the emotion. 1,000 eyes watching, but no one dares to speak. The song ends with the choir members raising their hands slowly to the sky, palms open, tears streaming down their faces. They bow. The lights fade. For a moment, the world is completely still. Then, the audience rises. A standing ovation thunders through the hall. The applause is so loud, it shakes the walls, but they can't hear it. They only feel the vibration through the floor. They smile, knowing that for once, the world heard their silence. Simon stands. His lips tremble slightly as he looks at them. "I don't think I've ever seen anything like this," he says softly. "You've just reminded all of us what true music is. It's not about sound. It's about heart." Sophia is crying openly. "That was the most beautiful performance I've ever seen," she says, her voice breaking. "I could feel every word you signed. You made me believe in miracles." Heidi wipes her eyes. "You don't need to hear to touch hearts," she says. "You already touched millions." Howie smiles, shaking his head in awe. "You've changed everything we thought music was," he says. "And I think the world needs to see this again and again." Simon looks at the group. His hand hovers over the golden buzzer. The crowd begins to chant, "Golden, golden, golden." The members of the choir look at one another, unsure of what's happening. Their translator quickly signs to them, explaining the chant. The youngest member, a boy, maybe 12 years old, begins to cry. He signs to his friend, "They love us." Simon closes his eyes, takes a deep breath, and slams his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rains down from the ceiling like a waterfall of dreams. The audience screams. The music swells. The choir members look up in wonder, seeing golden flakes fall over them. They can't hear the song playing, but they can feel the energy, the vibration of thousands cheering for them. Some drop to their knees, crying. Others look toward the judges, signing, "Thank you." The translator's voice trembles as she translates their message. They say thank you. They say this is for every deaf child who was told they could never belong on a stage. Simon walks up to them. He shakes the conductor's hand and signs, "Beautiful." The choir gasps. He learned that one word just for them. They sign back, "Thank you." The camera cuts to a montage, clips of their life in Manila. Children rehearsing in a small church, without instruments, feeling the rhythm through touch. Their teacher, a woman who lost her hearing at 10, teaching them how to feel the vibration of sound through their skin. They practice by placing their hands on a speaker, memorizing the timing of each note. They rehearse in rain, in heat, sometimes with no power, but they never stop. One of the members says through a sign interpreter, "We don't hear music, but we feel God in it. And that is enough." The screen fades back to the present, the golden confetti still falling. The crowd is still cheering. Simon has tears in his eyes. The host says softly, "Ladies and gentlemen, your golden buzzer act, the Silent Souls Choir from Manila." The audience roars again. The lights shimmer gold. The choir gathers in a circle, signing to each other, "We did it. We really did it." Then the music transitions into a slower, more emotional melody as the video dives deeper into their story. They come from a small community in Manila, one of the poorest areas of the city. Many of them lost their hearing due to illness, some from birth, some from accidents. Yet all of them share one dream: to be heard without hearing, to speak without voice. They started singing together, not to perform, but to heal. Their choir began in a small church where the sound of traffic drowned everything, but inside, their silence was sacred. One of the girls, Maria, 17 years old, lost her hearing after a severe fever when she was 8. She once loved to sing, but after losing her hearing, she stopped talking entirely. Her parents worried she would never smile again. Then one day, a teacher from a local school for the deaf invited her to join a signing choir. She said yes. The first time she performed, she felt the vibrations of the drum in her chest, and smiled. That smile never left her again. The choir's conductor, Liza, is 28. She was a professional musician before she lost her hearing in an accident. Instead of giving up, she learned sign language and began teaching deaf children how to express music visually. Her dream was simple: to show the world that music is not limited to sound. And today, on that stage, her dream came true. The video cuts to interviews, Simon saying softly, "I think what they've done is one of the most emotional things I've ever seen. You don't need to hear to create something magical. You just need to feel." The clip goes viral overnight. Social media explodes with love. Millions share the video, saying, "No sound. Just soul." The world can't stop watching. Celebrities, musicians, and deaf communities around the globe call it a historic moment. The choir becomes a global symbol of courage and inclusion. They are invited to perform internationally, in schools for the deaf, in charity concerts, and even at the United Nations. Their message echoes: you don't have to hear to have a voice. The documentary-style narration continues, showing the impact of their golden buzzer moment. Deaf children in rural areas begin to dream again. Parents cry watching their kids sign along to songs. Teachers use their performance as inspiration. It's not just a talent show moment anymore, it's a movement. Months later, during the finals, the Silent Souls Choir returns. The lights dim again. They perform a new piece, one they created themselves, using nothing but sign, rhythm, and expression. The audience already knows, this is not about winning anymore. This is about showing the world what love sounds like, even in silence. Their final performance ends in a breathtaking tableau, hands raised high, forming a heart. The audience rises again. Simon, smiling proudly, whispers to Sophia, they already won the moment they walked on that stage. As the video nears its end, the narration softens. Sometimes, the loudest voice comes from silence. Sometimes, the purest song has no sound. And sometimes, the greatest performance comes from those who cannot hear applause but can feel love more deeply than anyone else. This is not just a story about a choir. It's a story about hope. About faith. About the human spirit that refuses to be silent. So the next time you hear music, remember, it's not the sound that matters. It's the soul behind it. Thank you for watching Story Sprout. One of the judges leaned into the microphone. His voice was trembling, and for once, he wasn't performing for the cameras. He said, "I've judged hundreds of auditions, but I've never seen anything like that. You didn't just play music, you lived it." The crowd roared again. Another judge, her eyes glistening, added, "When you played the violin, you made us feel your pain. But when you sang, you made us believe in your strength. That's what art is supposed to do." Elena smiled, shy and radiant. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. She covered her face, laughing through tears. The host walked out to comfort her, placing a hand on her shoulder. He asked her what the song meant. She wiped her eyes and said softly, "It's about finding your voice, after losing everything that once defined you." The story behind those words began to unfold in the interviews that followed. Years before the audition, Elena had suffered a terrible accident that nearly ended her ability to play the violin. A car crash had left her right arm badly injured. Doctors told her she might never hold a bow again. For months, she lived in silence, unable to do the one thing that made her feel alive. But music had always been her language. So while her body healed, she began to teach herself something new: how to sing. Her voice became her second instrument, born from pain and necessity. It took her years to recover, even longer to believe she could perform again. The violin was her first love, but singing gave her back her purpose. When she finally stood on that stage, she wasn't there to prove anything to the judges. She was there to prove to herself that she had survived. The night after her audition aired, her name was everywhere. Clips of her performance flooded the internet. Millions of people watched her cry, watched her sing, watched her rise. Comments poured in from around the world. Some said her voice healed them. Others said she reminded them of hope they had lost. She wasn't just a contestant anymore. She had become a symbol. But Elena never let the fame change her. In interviews, she spoke softly, humbly. She always said the same thing, that her music wasn't about perfection, it was about truth. She said, "When I play, I let my pain speak. When I sing, I let my heart answer." Weeks later came the finals. The stage was bigger, brighter, louder. The pressure was heavier, but Elena walked out calm, her violin glinting under the lights. This time, everyone knew her name. The judges smiled when they saw her. The audience screamed before she even played a note. She bowed her head, breathed deeply, and began again. Her final performance was unlike anything she'd done before. It started with a whisper of strings, gentle and trembling. Then came her voice, soft at first, then growing until it filled the arena. She was performing a song she had written herself, a song about healing, about finding light through the cracks. The music built, rising and falling like waves. She sang and played as if her soul were on display. The violin wept, her voice soared, and the crowd watched, entranced. When the last note fell away, she stood still, tears shining in her eyes. The silence lasted only a second before the world erupted. Confetti rained down. The judges stood again, clapping wildly. One of them whispered to the others, "We just witnessed history." When the results were announced that night, the world already knew what was coming. Elena Carter was declared the winner. The crowd went wild. The camera caught her covering her face again, shaking her head in disbelief. The same girl who once thought she'd never play again had just conquered the world with the very thing she almost lost. In the days that followed, her life changed forever. Record labels called. Television interviews lined up. She was invited to perform on international stages. But the most touching moment came when she returned to her hometown. The same small town where she first learned to play, where neighbors had watched her grow up. They held a celebration in her honor. Children from her old school stood in the crowd holding tiny violins, looking up at her like she was a superhero. She played for them that night under a canopy of stars, and when she finished, she told them, "Don't ever let anyone tell you your dream is too small." Her story became more than just a performance. It became a movement, a reminder that talent isn't just about skill. It's about heart, about persistence, about refusing to let life's noise drown out your own melody. She proved that the most powerful performances don't come from perfection, but from honesty. Years later, Elena would say in an interview that her favorite part of that night wasn't the standing ovation or the trophy. It was the silence right before she sang, the moment when everything stood still and the world was waiting. She said that was the moment she realized she had already won, because she was no longer afraid. Today, her performance is remembered as one of the greatest in talent show history. Reaction videos, tributes, and covers continue to circulate online, each one paying homage to the girl who dared to surprise the world. She tricks the judges with her violin, one headline read, then opens her mouth and changes everything. But those who truly understood her story knew it wasn't a trick. It was transformation. Alina's journey wasn't about shocking anyone, it was about showing them what happens when a person refuses to stay silent. Every note she played, every word she sang, came from a place of truth that no competition could define. Her legacy wasn't in the trophy she won, but in the hearts she touched. And that's why, even years later, people still talk about that night. They still replay the clip, still feel the chills when she lifts her violin and takes that first breath. Because every time she sings, it feels like the world pauses again, just long enough to remember what beauty sounds like when it's born from pain. So the next time you see someone step on stage, nervous and trembling, remember Elena Carter. Remember that greatness often walks in quietly, carrying a violin, unsure of itself, until it finds the courage to open its mouth and let the world hear the truth. And that's the power of music. That's the power of heart. And that's why we tell stories like this. This has been another unforgettable tale from Spotlight Stories, where every performance is more than just sound, it's a heartbeat, a memory, a spark. If you felt inspired by Alina's journey, stay with us for more stories that remind us what it means to be human, what it means to dream, and what it means to finally be heard. Because sometimes, the quietest voices sing the loudest.